Common Sense Army, it is Wednesday, and on today's episode of the Why I'm Right podcast, we're breaking down a bunch of stories from the news this week. You aren't going to want to miss this episode because there is a clear agenda from the mainstream media to hide these exact stories that we're going to talk about today from you, and we're talking about the history in this country, especially over the last 4 years, of Democrats and people in the Democratic media that are out there to try to suppress stories that hurt Joe Biden. You aren't going to want to miss this episode. This is the Why I'm Right podcast.
We live in a world filled with noise and confusion, clickbait, and outright lies in the media. But here, we cut through the clutter to find the truth, no matter how uncomfortable it may be. This is Why I'm Right, the podcast where we dig deeper, ask the tough questions, and unravel the tangled webs of political and current events. Join us as we dissect the latest news, analyze political rhetoric, and challenge the narratives that dominate the mainstream discourse. We're not shy. From dissecting the motives behind policy decisions to uncovering the hidden agendas of public figures, it's what we do. It's time to think for ourselves. This is Why I'm Right. And now your unafraid and unapologetic host, Matt Taylor.
He is right. This is the Why I'm Right podcast. If this is your first time here, I'm happy to have you. If you're already a member of the Common Sense Army, welcome back. Today's an episode you guys don't want to miss. Obviously, our last episode was last week. I was sick over the weekend. Spent it Mother's Day with my family, and everyone out there, I hope you had a great Mother's Day. Without further ado, let's dive into today's episode. And I have to say this, I say this on every episode, we are trying to grow the Common Sense Army one day at a time, one podcast at a time. The one way you can help in this mission is by clicking subscribe here below and sharing these videos, following us on social media, and sharing these videos with your friends and family, people who agree and disagree, because the most important thing in our nation right now is the ability to have civil discourse, especially when talking about politics, because we right now, at least there's an appearance of major divide in our nation, and it's important that we can have free speech and talk back and forth about issues that are important to every single American in this country. And today's an episode you don't want to miss, because this episode has been something I've been working on for the last week or so, specifically outlining some of these stories that we've seen recently that is showcases how corrupt our media is, how corrupt the Democrat Party is, how corrupt this trial is in New York City. We're seeing Donald Trump on the stand, in the courtroom, day in and day out, having people like Stormy Daniels, a porn star, call it for what it is, a porn star, on the stand, spewing and changing her story from the story that she's written about previously, stories that she's gone on numerous podcasts, numerous media outlets, CNN, MSNBC. And our story's changing over and over. Now they bring in their other star witness, Michael Cohen, who's a serial perjurer on the stand, has already been convicted, went to jail for perjuring previously. And he's their star witness now. And even his testimony, to be honest with you, showcases that he's the one that falsified documents. So this whole trial in New York City is about falsifying business records. And he talks about how he falsified business records. It's a sham in New York City. Now we're finally seeing Republicans rally around Trump. They've already rallied around him, but now Republicans, prominent Republicans, we saw Speaker Mike Johnson, we saw Vivek Ramaswamy, we've seen numerous Republicans show up, J.D. Vance, show up in the courtroom to show their support for Donald Trump. I think it's a genius move by the Trump team, because obviously we know they aren't allowing Donald Trump to talk. He has this gag order on him. He can't talk about the trial. He can't talk about the testimony. He can't talk about the witnesses. He can't talk about the sham going on. He can't talk about the judge. So what does Trump do? I think it's something they should do more of, is bring in proxy, right? Have these people who are prominent, great speakers. Vivek Ramaswamy is probably the most articulate speaker I've ever seen, ever, in the history of this country. He is great, and in my opinion, he should be the vice president for Donald Trump, because he is everything that the media wants you to believe Donald Trump isn't. And side by side, unified together, he's a minority. He's somebody that's very articulate, someone that's very upfront, honest. Putting him beside Donald Trump on a ticket would be something I think would be unstoppable right now, especially with what we have going on the Democrat side of the aisle. But, you know, everything they're doing in New York looks great right now. Everything we're seeing coming out of the trials looks great right now for Donald Trump. And we still don't know what the result is going to be. But as Vivek said yesterday in the courtroom, or on the steps in front of the courtroom, because they wouldn't allow him to speak in the courtroom, you know, at the end of the day, it's not only about the jurors in the jury box, but the end result of this trial in New York City will be determined by the voters in this nation, because right now we're setting up what I believe could be annihilation, and could be the death of this crazy movement we see in this country, the crazy inflation we've seen in this country, the open border policies. You know, we've seen so much go on the last 4 years. We've almost been numb to it, in my opinion. But, you know, so let's dive into today's episode. I had to start there, but let's talk about what's going on, because this past week has been filled with so much stuff. There's one story that I want to dive into. It's about the Ashley Biden diary. That's really going to be the main sum of this episode today, because what is in that diary, or that personal journal, that now has been proven to be true, is, in my opinion, crazy that the media has not covered it a fair way. But let's start the episode here talking about kind of setting the stage here for why the media acts the way the media does. So let's talk about Jen Psaki. We all know her. She was the White House secretary for a long time, spoke on behalf of the White House for, you know, the first part of the Biden administration. And so she came out recently. She just released a book, and she's getting a lot of flack today. She's getting a ton of flack today because in her book, she talks about the, you know, terrible day, which was, obviously, we all know the disastrous pullout of Afghanistan. And we all watched, and we had multiple American citizens, soldiers in our military, you know, pass away due to really Biden's lack of decision-making and Biden's poor decision-making, which led to, obviously, the disastrous pullout of Afghanistan, which led to the death of our military. And so we all know the day at Joint Base Andrews, you know, the Air Force Base, where the bodies came back from Afghanistan of our dead soldiers, people who died in combat serving our nation. And the bodies came back, and obviously the president is there to receive the bodies with the families that are now Gold Star families, you know, their son, their brother, their sister, whatever it is, passed away due to Biden's poor decision-making in the pullout of Afghanistan. So the bodies come back, and again, all of this is documented. All of this is on camera. All of this is video recorded. All of this was live on Fox News, live on CNN, live on MSNBC, live on the mainstream media. We all saw it in real time. And for some reason, some godforsaken reason, no reason to do this again, but essentially what happens is in Jen Psaki's book, she talks about how the Gold Star families are lying about Biden checking his watch. So again, I'm setting the stage here. The bodies come back from overseas due to the pullout in Afghanistan. Biden is there with his wife and the families, the Gold Star families, who just lost a loved one. And the bodies are being received, and Biden is checking his watch countless times, all on camera. We have the pictures. I'm going to show them right here. This is Joe Biden checking his watch countless times. There's pictures, different pictures of different times where Biden is just checking his watch. And anyone knows it's disrespectful in any meeting you're in to continuously check your watch over and over, because what you're telling the other person that's in a meeting with you is this time is not important to you. You got better things to do. And frankly, when you're the president of the United States in this setting, this is not a meeting. This is a terrible moment for all of these families. And for you to be countless times checking your watch, it shows how disrespectful and how much you could care less about these Gold Star families and about the people who were killed based on your bad decision making in Afghanistan, who were there to serve our nation, to protect our freedoms. And your decisions led to their death, and you're sitting there checking your watch. Well, for some reason, Jen Psaki thought the fact-checking that went on in the media, again, left-wing media outlets fact-checked this whole story and have confirmed Joe Biden countless times checked his watch in a sign of disrespect to the Gold Star families. The Gold Star families have come out and spoken about it, but Jen Psaki in her book this week said, quote, the president looked at his watch only after the ceremony ended. Only after the ceremony had ended. Biden's critics, again talking about the people that fact-checked and said, hey, Biden was checking his watch. It was super disrespectful. She says, quote, Biden's critics were engaged in misinformation. She goes on to talk about how, again, Biden's critics used this to show and push an agenda that Biden could care less. It's clear. It's clear. Again, we have the pictures, we have the videos, we have everything. So why is it important that Jen Psaki puts this in her book? Now she had to take it out of her book because she's gotten a lot of flack about, again, a point-blank lie. Something that we all know to be untrue. You are now saying once again, it's already been fact-checked. We already saw it, and you decide to lie about it in your book to try to, in a sad attempt, to protect Joe Biden and to push an agenda about Joe Biden, especially in an election cycle. It just shows, again, the media's bias and how the media is willing to lie about things that we're seeing with our own eyes. Imagine what they're doing about things we don't see with our own eyes. The lies they tell us about things we don't see with our own eyes. So why is this important? Because this is Jen Psaki, the same Jen Psaki who last week was on The View, crapping on and obliterating Kristi Noem for lies in her book. And again, Kristi Noem is a liar in her book. I've called her out on this podcast numerous times about the lies in the book, and I hate when people lie about things that just don't matter. Kristi Noem clearly lied in her book. She said that she sat in front of, Kim Jong-un and intimidated him, and Kim Jong-un underestimated her ability to deal with tyrants. She went on in her book. Kristi Noem did. And Kristi Noem, again, released an audio tape of the book, an audio book. For people who don't want to actually read the real book, you can listen to the audio book. And guess what? Kristi Noem read the audio book. So again, I call Kristi Noem a liar because Kristi Noem can't say I didn't know it was in the book. All of these people talk about how there's ghostwriters, and that's great. I think that's a problem to begin with. If you are given tons of money to do a book, you should write the book yourself. If you need help, you should at least know everything in the book is factually true, especially things that can be fact-checked pretty easily. But last week, we saw Jen Psaki go on The View and say this about Kristi Noem. Just listen to this. In retrospect, knowing what I just told you about her lies in her book that was just released, about things that we saw with our own eyes. Here's Jen Psaki on The View last week talking about Kristi Noem.
Work for somebody who's lied about a foreign leader they've met with. And Alyssa made this point. This is so true. Meeting with Kim Jong-un, there are a handful of people who have ever done this. It's very knowable. I just wrote a book. You read the book 1,000 times.
So many.
You read it out loud. When you're doing the audiobook, you think, oh, you need a comma there. That weird word is strange. When she said, and I met with Kim Jong-un, did she think to herself, I didn't meet with Kim Jong-un?
It's right there. She just said, you read the book 1,000 times, you read it out loud on the audiobook. Well, now we need to say the same thing to Jen Psaki. She's since not apologized for the story. She just said in future prints of the book, we're going to take that part of it out. Again, acknowledging you lied, but not taking accountability. Showcasing that, hey, the media, me, Jen Psaki, is willing to tell a falsehood to try to paint Joe Biden in a different light, in a clear lie. outright lie. Again, none of this stuff is up for interpretation. We all have seen with our own eyes. So what she's telling you is don't listen to your lying eyes. Listen to me. I'm the truth teller. I'm Jen Psaki, and I know the truth about Joe Biden. Again, it's so clear. It's so clear. I got to play this. This is the Gold Star family, again, talking about what it was like on that day. Here's a Gold Star family, one of the Gold Star fathers, talking about the day at St. Andrews and Joe Biden.
Well, I stood there on the tarmac watching you check your watch over and over again. All I wanted to do was shout out, "It's 2:30, asshole." But out of respect to the other grieving families, I bit my tongue once again.
So again, it's just sad. The whole thing is just sad. Again, it's a terrible lie to tell, especially trying to essentially call these Gold Star families liars, because they've all came out. All 6 of the families that were there came out and said this was so disrespectful to check your watch over and over. I don't want to beat a dead horse with this story, but I tell this story at the front of the episode here because I want to set the stage to show you an example of what the media is willing to do on a daily basis. And what the media is willing to do on a daily basis is show to you a desire to cover up for Joe Biden and a willingness to lie again and again about things that people, you and I, can see. And that's the one thing about social media that is great right now, is because these people get exposed very easily. Because the media could try to paint a story, but what happens is when we have the fact check and we have the video evidence, it's hard to lie, and it makes these people lose their credibility really, really quickly. But I had to show you that at the front of the episode to say, this is the people we're dealing with. This is the media we're dealing with. These are the people that are willing to lie to you to push their agenda. That's why this whole fake news movement was started in this country, because people are starting to see how fake the media actually is, the mainstream media in this country. And that's why we're here on this podcast. I say it all the time. The reason this podcast is here is because I don't believe the media is honest. I believe there's little nuggets that they give you on a daily basis in the media of truth, nuggets of truth. And it's our job here to take those nuggets and to showcase what's really going on in this country, because people need to wake up and know what's going on in this country. Again, we have a common sense approach. That's why we started with that story. But now let's get into the real story of today's episode. And this is, in my opinion, devastating for Joe Biden. But it won't be devastating for Joe Biden if we here on this podcast don't talk about it, because the mainstream media is covering it up and not even talking about it. And imagine if this story was about Donald Trump and Ivanka Trump. If you don't know the story, Ashley Biden has now confirmed her diary from 2020 that was released and leaked in the media is 100% true. The reason she's confirming it is because the person who stole the diary from Ashley Biden is now facing criminal charges and is, now has been sentenced to jail time, a month in jail. And this woman, Amy Harris, is a mother, and she sold Ashley Biden's diary to Project Veritas for $40,000, which later, obviously, the diary became public. But we need to talk about the contents of what was in the diary, because we now know it's true. We now know everything in the diary that we have seen is true, but yet no one is talking about it. No one is holding Joe Biden accountable for the contents of his daughter's diary. So I wanted you to listen to this clip. This is Vincent Oshana of Valuetainment. He's also on the PBD podcast, Home Team All the Time. I listen to that podcast religiously. I listen to almost every episode that is released. Here's a kind of satire view on it, or funny view. He's a comedian, but here's Vincent Oshana talking about this diary. Listen up, because this is critically important for what we're going to talk about here.
Newsflash, everybody. Ashley Biden, daughter of creepy, sleepy Joe Biden, just confirmed that the leaked diary that was found at a friend's house in 2020 is actually hers. Here's a letter that Ashley wrote to Chief Judge Swain of the Southern District of New York saying, "My personal private journal was stolen and sold for profit." Even Snopes, of all places, fact-checked it and said it's true. And for those of you that have never seen the diary, over here she asks, "Was I molested?" And then she goes on to say, "I remember having sex with my friends at a young age. Showers with my dad, probably not appropriate." And to all you libtards out there, stop trying to pretend like Joe Biden hasn't been a creep throughout his entire career. Even here when he was getting sworn in at the White House, look at him trying to kiss this girl and make her uncomfortable. So Ashley Biden, as difficult as it may be, I think it's time for you to come forward and tell the world how much of a creep your father really is.
So yes, you kind of saw the contents of the diary there. She talks about how she thinks she was molested at a young age. She talks about how she showered with her father, which was probably not appropriate. That's a quote. She talks about how, she was having sex at a young age, how she recalls in second grade she was pulling up her shirt to show young boys her underwear, how she was sexualized. I mean, it's a tragedy for anyone, especially fathers out there, mothers out there, to read this diary. It's sickening. I was talking with my wife about it, and she didn't even want to have the conversation because it was so sickening to her to actually read this. And we now know the diary is 100% true. And here's the thought that I have about this Ashley Biden diary. I'm a father. I have a daughter. If I was the president of the United States of America or vice president of the United States of America, Joe Biden has been both, or I was in Congress, which Joe Biden was for years, and I found out through media or just from conversations with my daughter or from seeing her diary, and we now have seen the diary. If you and I are seeing it, Joe Biden clearly has seen it. And if my daughter wrote in her diary that she was molested at a young age, that she was sexualized at a young age, that she remembers these showers that I was having with her at a young age, this is something that you have to address. Because the silence here is deafening. The silence here shows you the whole story. Because if I was in Congress, I was vice president, or I was president, and this story came out, I would probably say something before the story came out because, again, that's just who I am, what I believe. But Joe Biden, who was president, vice president, and in Congress for years, has seen this diary. Knows that his daughter says, "I think I was molested at a young age, sexualized at a young age, having sex at a young age." And if I didn't molest her, Joe Biden, if I didn't molest her, how are you not coming out and saying something like on the lines of, "I'm going to use every bit of my power to find out what happened to my daughter, because we're going to hold whoever this was accountable, because my daughter is telling me, is writing about it, there's evidence of it." I would use every bit of power that I had, political or not, to bring whoever molested my daughter to justice. And I would probably go further than that. But Joe Biden's silence on this issue showcases the whole thing. And we have to ask, why is this story not being covered in mainstream media? Could you imagine if Ivanka Trump wrote in her diary that she believes she was molested at a young age, sexualized at a young age, having sex at a young age? And could you imagine if Ivanka Trump wrote in her diary at a young age that she was having inappropriate showers with her father that were, quote, probably not appropriate? Do you think the mainstream media would be covering it? Do you think they'd be saying anything about it? But right now, no one in the mainstream media, including Fox News, no one's talking about this story at all. At all. And it showcases, again, they're willing to cover up the entire mainstream media. I don't care if you think they're right wing, left wing, whatever you think about the mainstream media. This story is factually true. And this story shows you, especially in juxtaposition of what's going on in New York City right now, where we're taking the word of a porn star going on the stand in a business records case, talking about Donald Trump and how she had sex with Donald Trump without a condom, talks about his boxer briefs, goes into explicit details about Donald Trump's sex life at the same exact time that this story gets confirmed. No one's talking about it. What's more salacious? Having sex with a porn star? I get it. You're having an affair. I don't condone it whatsoever. I think it's wrong. Or molesting your daughter, potentially molesting your daughter. Or potentially having inappropriate showers with your daughter. Why is that something the media is unwilling to hold Joe Biden accountable for, especially the left-wing media that for the last 6, 7, 8 years has been hyping up this Me Too movement, hyping up how we have to believe every woman? Well, hold on a second. Why aren't we believing Ashley Biden, right? I mean, this is craziness in real time. This is despicable in real time. And when we look at the overarching theme of what the mainstream media, the elites, I know a lot of people hate that word elite, but the mainstream media and the people in power in this country have been willing to suppress stories, lie about stories over and over that would negatively impact Joe Biden. I don't understand why. We all know the story of the 51 intelligence agents in the FBI, the CIA, who signed off that the Hunter Biden laptop story, the Hunter Biden laptop was fake news. It was from Russia, misinformation sent by Russia to interfere with our election. We now know 51 intelligence agents signed off that it was fake, and it's 100% not true. That would have hurt that story if that Hunter Biden laptop story came out, it was real, and the mainstream media covered it in an honest way. That could have impacted the last election. But hold on a second, it's Joe Biden. We're going to cover it up, and we're actually going to have intelligence agents who are in our government, work for the government, sign off. 51 of them signed off this was fake. Again, there has to be accountability for those 51 agents. And in my opinion, all 51 agents should be fired because they are supposed to. We need our intelligence agents in this country to be honest. And frankly, if you didn't want to sign off on it, you didn't have to. You didn't have to sign your name saying this is fake. Just don't do anything. But when you sign off it's fake and we find out it's real, you need to have accountability. We also know, again, you have to showcase the whole story about Joe Biden. We also know that in his White House, this year, last year, whenever it was, that the Secret Service found cocaine in the White House. They found cocaine in our people's house. And we all know that the White House is one of the most, if not the most, should be the most secure buildings in the world. There's probably surveillance everywhere in the White House. I've been to the White House. And to have cocaine come into the White House, you find the cocaine and there's no accountability for whose cocaine it was, what the cocaine was doing in the White House, who was supposed to use the cocaine. There's no accountability whatsoever. We also know, again, it sounds crazy that these things are all true, proven to be true, fact-checked to be true. We also know that Joe Biden had classified documents at his house in Delaware behind his Corvette. We all know this to be true. We all know that Joe Biden had classified documents he had no means of having. When you're the vice president, you have no authority whatsoever to classify or unclassify documents. But that being true, Joe Biden had classified documents in his garage at his house in an unsecured location where anyone could have gotten those documents. And the Department of Justice did an investigation, confirmed it to be true, and said, we're not going to charge Joe Biden because he's a forgetful old man. He didn't mean to do it. He had no intentions of committing a crime. But it is true. I mean, think about what we're dealing with. Again, they raided Mar-a-Lago. They went after Donald Trump for the same crime, charging Trump in Florida for the same exact crime, having classified documents at his house. We're seeing in real time, folks, the media is willing to, the elites, the people in power, the DOJ, the CIA, the FBI, are willing to cover up anything to protect Joe Biden because they're scared of Donald Trump. And I mentioned it a second ago, we all know the corruption that's gone on with Ukraine, and Joe Biden, Ukraine and Hunter Biden, the business dealings in China, the money that's been sent through Burisma. We all know the stories are true, but yet the media has covered it up, doesn't talk about it anymore. And this Ashley Biden story to me is the most in your face. It showcases everything that's wrong in this country right now. It showcases to you, it showcases to me that we can't trust the media. And that's sad in this country. We're supposed to be the pinnacle of democracy, the pinnacle of free media, the pinnacle of free speech. Yet our media is willing to lie to us consistently on a daily basis, day in, day out. We got people like Jen Psaki who will lie about things that, again, we see with our own eyes. And this example of the Ashley Biden diary, we see with our own eyes what she wrote. I believe I was molested. I was taking showers with my father that were probably not appropriate. Her words, not mine. And yet no one is being held accountable. And in my opinion, this should show every voter in this country the importance of voting against Joe Biden. If you are not for the establishment, you're not for being controlled, being lied to over and over. Because I just showed you 5 major examples of not just the DOJ lying, not just the CIA lying, not just the media lying, these are movements, tons of people that are willing to lie to you over and over and over to suppress the truth from you. And there's no accountability for it. Why? Because the last name's Biden, not Trump. And it's sad. So let's talk about one last story right now. We have to talk about it because it's breaking news today. Again, today's Wednesday. It's breaking news today. Joe Biden has declined and refused to participate in the official presidential debates and proposes an alternative. We all know that Donald Trump's ready to rumble. He's ready to roll. Donald Trump has said on countless times, anytime, any place, anywhere, you name it, Joe, I'll debate you. Come to the courthouse. I'll come to you wherever you want. You want to do it in the White House? Let's do it anywhere. Because Donald Trump has nothing to hide. Again, we just talked about how corrupt the media is. And instead of doing the official presidential debates that have the commission that are supposed to be independent, we all know they're not, but supposed to be independent of presidential debates, Joe Biden has declined to participate in the 3 presidential debates, and yet he has now said, I'm willing to debate Donald Trump on my terms, with CNN hosting. And he's gone even further, saying there can't be crowds there. Has to be Biden-friendly moderators, and a whole list of other requirements and stipulations for these debates. So here's Joe Biden. Here's a clip of Joe Biden talking about, he posted it this morning at 8 a.m. I'm sure it was recorded maybe a few days ago because there's no way Joe was up at 8 a.m. this morning. So here's Joe Biden, 8 a.m. this morning. I'm wondering how many takes it took to get this video done. Here's Joe Biden debating, but not accepting the independent commission on debates. Here's Joe.
Donald Trump lost 2 debates to me in 2020. And since then, he hadn't shown up for debate. Now he's acting like he wants to debate me again. Well, make my day, pal. I'll even do it twice. So let's pick the dates, Donald. I hear you're free on Wednesdays.
So you hear there a little crack a joke at the end. If you don't know, again, there's no court on Wednesdays for Donald Trump in New York City. It was supposed to be a joke. Didn't really hit that well. But nonetheless, we're going to get some debates. The first one's coming up in June, it looks like. And I think the timing of it is critically important once again. The timing of these debates are critically important because to me, it showcases what's really going to happen. I've already talked about on this podcast, I don't believe Joe Biden will be the nominee. I think it's time that the Democrats have come together, made a decision, and said, let's let Joe fail. Let's let it fail. We're seeing it in real time, guys. Look at the swing states. Look at the other states in the country. Out of the 6 swing states, Donald Trump's leading in 5 of the 6, and the 6 is Wisconsin, and it's within the margin of error. So Trump could potentially be leading in all 6 swing states. We could see a blowout of crazy proportions in this upcoming election. An electoral college victory like we haven't seen since Ronald Reagan. Trump later, here's the tweet after that video came out at 8 a.m. this morning where Joe says, I guess you're free on Wednesdays. Well, hold on. Here's what Donald Trump responded. Here's the tweet from Donald J. Trump. He said, quote, "Crooked Joe Biden is the worst debater I have ever faced. He can't put 2 sentences together. Crooked is also the worst president in the history of the United States by far. It's time for a debate so he can explain to the American people his highly destructive open border policy, new and ridiculous EV mandates, the allowance of crushing inflation, high taxes, and his weak foreign policy, which is allowing the world to catch on fire. I am ready and willing to debate Crooked Joe at the 2 proposed times in June and September. I would strongly recommend more than 2 debates and for excitement purposes, a very large venue. Although Biden is supposedly afraid of crowds, that's only because he doesn't get them. Just tell me when and I'll be there. Let's get ready to rumble." Donald Trump's ready to go. He doesn't care when, where, how, who's, I'm sure. Let's be honest here. It's going to be on CNN. Let's be honest. We're going to see Caitlin Collins, I'm sure. I'm sure we're going to see someone from Telemundo to try to showcase diversity of some sort on the stage. We're going to see Chris Wallace. I mean, we know who we're going to get. We know the type of debate we're going to get. But then the stipulations beyond who the moderators are going to be, they have to be Joe Biden-friendly moderators for the debate. No crowds whatsoever. And they also said in the stipulation, no RFK Jr., which I think is very interesting. But we're seeing in real time, I just said it. I think the Democrats are done with Joe. I think we're going to see it very clearly. They're going to say Joe has some sort of medical issue. They may not even go into details about what the medical issue is, but he needs to step away for medical purposes, and they're going to bring in another nominee. I believe it's going to be Michelle Obama because at the late hour that we're going to see this occur, you need a household name. We all know Obama is the golden boy. Barack Obama is the golden boy of the Democrat Party, the golden child. He hits every box, and his wife would be the first female president, the first black female president, and would pretty much check every box the Democrats in the DEI agenda are looking for today. To me, this just shows how desperate the Biden camp is today. I mean, again, people aren't dumb. People aren't stupid. We see what's going on in New York City. We see what's going on in Georgia. We see what's going on across the country right now. And we see people rallying behind Donald Trump at epic proportions. Look at what happened in New Jersey this past weekend. They're saying about 100,000, any estimates you see out there, 80 to 100,000 people showed up in blue, Democrat stronghold, New Jersey, to show their support for the former president, Donald Trump, and it was crazy. Well, if you look at the pictures, you see what happened in Wildwood, New Jersey. I'm from New Jersey. Typically, Jersey's very left-wing. That's one of the reasons I don't live in New Jersey anymore. One of the other reasons is taxes are incredibly high, and so I moved to Florida. Again, land of the free, home of the brave down here in Florida. But anyway, you look at what's going on across the country, and if Trump can get 100,000 people, 80 to 100,000 people to show up in blue New Jersey, get the support he's getting, show up at court, and have the people in Manhattan, a strong Democrat stronghold piece of the Democrat electoral college map. If Trump can get the support he's getting on a daily basis in Manhattan, in New York City, and we see people showing up in support, it shows you how bad it's really gotten in this country. Has it gotten bad enough yet? Has it gotten bad enough? I believe it has. Bongino asks the question all the time. He says, has it gotten bad enough? And he says, I don't think it has. Well, I do think it has. And I think the Democrats know it. You think about it. For a long time in these election years, Democrats start saying stuff like, we need to abolish the Electoral College. Abolish it. Because they know, typically, historically, that when you factor in states like California, you factor in states that are densely populated like New York City, that the popular vote typically is going to go to the Democrat nominee. No one's talking about that. Because Trump is leading in national polls. That includes California. That includes New York City. People are fed up with Joe. People are fed up with the policies. Trump laid it out beautifully there. And Trump will play with Joe Biden. I don't care who's moderating the debate. I don't care what stipulations they put in place. I don't care who's allowed to be there, what questions are allowed to be asked. Trump will make Joe Biden look like a toddler on the stage. We all know Joe can't even complete, as Trump said, he can't complete 2 sentences. We've all watched the blunders on a daily basis. We've watched him say stuff like, my uncle was eaten by cannibals. I was born in the black, Muslim, Jewish, Greek, Italian, Polish community, the black community. I go to church. I go to mosque. I go synagogue. I mean, this guy has no idea even who he is. We've seen him say his son died overseas in combat. Not true. And I mean, this guy can't even tell his own biography in a complete and factual way. And now when you add in this Ashley Biden thing, we know Donald Trump. Donald Trump is good at many things, but one of the best things Donald Trump is good at is trolling, right? You remember during the Clinton times, Trump brought the women that accused Hillary Clinton's husband, Bill Clinton, to the debates as a troll to showcase to the world. She's pushing this Me Too movement. She's saying we need to believe every woman, but yet her husband has accusers that say that he raped them. This is the same thing here, guys. So when the media lies and covers up stories over and over, and they don't talk about stories like this Ashley Biden story, they don't talk about stories like the Hunter Biden laptop story, they don't talk about stories like the 51 intelligence agents signed off on it, they don't talk about stories that are going to negatively hurt Joe Biden like the business dealings in China, the business dealings in Ukraine, the big guy. They don't talk about those things. Well, guess what? When Donald Trump's on that stage, it doesn't matter who's moderating it because Donald Trump will moderate with Joe. Donald Trump will ask the questions that the moderator won't. And they can try all they want to muzzle Donald Trump and say, oh, this is disrespectful. Oh, you can't be doing this. Oh, this is against, you signed a pledge. Trump is Trump. And the people want to see debate. They don't want to see a Joe Biden rally. If they wanted to see a Joe Biden rally or, a rally of Democrat, they would go show up for Joe Biden. Again, I mentioned it. Trump got 100,000 people to show up in Wildwood, New Jersey, a deep blue state. Joe Biden has a rally in deep blue Michigan or anywhere for that matter. In the most Democratic counties in the world, in California, in New York City. And he gets maybe 100 people to show up. And he needs to call in backup. We saw fundraisers. I talked about it previously. We saw fundraisers where they got to bring in Bon Jovi, Lizzo, Bill Clinton, Obama. Then they bring in real politicians in the Democratic movement because this guy cannot be inspiring to anybody. I mean, this guy can't inspire anything in this country. And when the people now have 4 years of Donald Trump and 4 years of crooked Joe Biden, can put them side by side, I'm telling you, Donald Trump on a debate stage will make Joe Biden look like a toddler. I don't care what they pump Joe Biden with. He will be annihilated, right? They could try to play this tough guy act and have Joe on a video say, make my day, pal. No one buys it. No one buys it. Even the deepest blue, even you liberals out there, no one's buying this crap. No one thinks Joe really wants to take the stage with Donald Trump because Trump is going to expose everything. Trump is going to expose the weaponization of the Department of Justice. Trump will expose the policies. Trump will expose the crap going on with Biden's family, the crimes that's gone on in the Biden's families. And we will see how those debates go. And like I said, I believe the real reason they don't want to do the real debates by the commission that have done debates for 30, 40 years in this country and have overlooked and oversaw debates in this country for 30, 40 years, elections, historically in this country, is because the timing of those debates showcase, get closer and closer to Election Day. Joe wants to do it earlier. Joe wants to do it in June, right? Joe wants to do it in June. I'm going to say it one more time. Joe wants to do this debate in June. That's next month. And if you think about it, I've said it plenty of times on this podcast, the Democratic convention is in August. So when Joe looks like shit on the stage and Donald Trump exposes Joe Biden for the man he really is on stage at the debate, that still gives Democrats time to throw in the secret weapon. I'm telling you right now, it's going to happen. I've never been more confident in any, prediction I've made. Joe Biden will not be the Democratic nominee for president. He won't. You can take my word for it. It's not going to happen. So they want to make Joe, and I told you, at some point in time, this decision was made, and they're allowing Joe to look like Joe. They're allowing Joe to be Joe. And when Joe's Joe, Trump looks pretty good. Even to Democrats. When Joe is Joe, Trump looks pretty good. Trump looks pretty smart when Joe is Joe. Trump looks like a president when Joe is Joe. No matter what you think about Trump, what you think about his personality, the way he talks, the way he acts, when you put Joe up there, Trump looks pretty presidential. Even to the leftist of the left, the lamest of the liberals out there, Trump looks pretty good. So as I say always on this podcast, again, we're going to continue to dive deeper into these stories. Don't be afraid to talk about the Ashley Biden story. I don't care what they say on the media. It is 100% true. They tried fact-checking me. I made a post on social media. They tried fact-checking me. MSNBC sent a independent review on Instagram of me talking about the Ashley Biden story. It was taken down for about all of 3 minutes, and then I sent backup information from Snopes, which is a left-wing organization, which shows this story to be 100% true, and boom, popped right back up. I'm telling you right now, guys, there is an agenda to silence stories that are going to hurt the Democratic movement right now. They control almost every industry in this country. They do. They just do. It's just a fact of the matter. And that's why they're scared of Donald Trump, because Trump is not a typical Republican. Trump is somebody that's bringing in new demographics. They talk about it on the left all the time. The demographics are changing in this country. Well, the demographics are changing in the Republican movement because Trump is now talking about freedom for all. Make America great again. Even blacks, Mexicans, gays, anyone, doesn't matter. These people historically have voted for the left wing in this country, and that is changing right now for the first time we've ever really seen it. Since Ronald Reagan, it's the first time we're seeing major demographic change in this country in the voter pool. And that is the scariest thing for the left wing in this country right now. So as I say always on this podcast, if you guys can click the subscribe button, it helps me out a lot more than you know. And share this podcast, share the videos on social media. Make sure you follow us. We're at Why I'm Right. If you want to be on the Why I'm Right podcast and have a debate back and forth with me, I'm always open to debate. Anytime, anywhere. Call me Trump. Anytime, anywhere, any place. All you have to do to come on the podcast or ask me a question I answer every single email I get is send me an email at matt@whyimrightpodcast or visit our website at www.whyimrightpodcast.com. You scroll to the bottom. There's a little place there you can ask me a question. I get back to you as soon as I can, but I do respond to every single email I get. We got merchandise out now. Make sure you check out our website and check out our social media pages. And everyone out there, I hope you have a great week. I hope you had a great Mother's Day. Every mother out there, I'll say it one last time. Happy Mother's Day to every mother out there. You guys are great, and you guys deserve Mother's Day every single day in this country. So just because it's not Mother's Day, I say Happy Mother's Day to you guys once again. And as always, I will continue this mission. I need your help to grow the Common Sense Army one day at a time, one podcast at a time. Have a great week. We'll be back tomorrow with another episode. and we'll dive deeper into all of these stories. This is the Why I'm Right podcast, and I just told you why I'm right.
You've been listening to Why I'm Right. Thanks for being a part of the Common Sense Army. Our passion is to cut through the noise and confusion and to bring light to clickbait and outright lies in the media. Unafraid, unapologetic, real and raw. We hope you've enjoyed the show. If you did, make sure to like, rate, and review. We'll be back soon. But in the meantime, find us on Instagram at Why I'm Right, on X at Why I'm Right Pod. And for more, hit the website at www.whyimrightpodcast.com. See you next time.